everyone, how's it going? My name is Jay and welcome to the channel, and welcome back to Prehistoric Kingdom, where we're currently working on a park using the alpha build of the game, and in today's episode we're going to be including a pair of Tarbosaurus, or if you're following the game's taxonomy, Tyrannosaurus bataar, which honestly I think both are relatively, I wouldn't say necessarily accepted. I think most people will go for Tarbosaurus bataar instead of Tyrannosaurus bataar, but you know what, they're pretty similar, and species, like the distinctions between species fluctuate with time, not just with extinct species, but with, you know, living ones as well, so not too fussed about what they call it, but it's just quite fun to use it as a separate species from the main Tyrannosaurus species we do have in the game, which is Tyrannosaurus rex, of course. But before we dive into the science of it too much, and you know me, I will talk about that for a while because I geek out over things like this so much. Let's talk about the build itself, because today I actually wasn't feeling building too much, but then I kind of started going with it, and I gotta say, this is just huge props again to the building mechanics in this game, the like creative control you have. Even though I wasn't really feeling it at first, once I got into the game and started actually building, the freedom I felt being able to just do whatever I want, you know, scale things up and down, use all these different textures like the rocks, the terrain tools, it just gets you right back into the mood for building, like just on the turn of a dime. I don't even know if I'm using that phrase correctly, but you know what I mean. Like it doesn't take long at all, and immediately I feel like, oh yeah, I can do exactly what I want to do here, and it was so much fun. This habitat build in general was quite a lot of fun. It is probably the biggest one so far. I think for an animal like this, what would be an apex predator, you want to have a big habitat, a lot of space to roam, and honestly, when you look at the size of the creature in here, I still think this would probably be too small if it was a real life habitat. You would want to give it huge space, because these are big apex predators. They would have had massive ranges out in the wild. Like if you just look at apex predators on land in real life nowadays, like living ones, like the polar bears, grizzly bears, big cats, they all have massive territories, huge home ranges, and we could only imagine for extinct animals in real life, that range would have increased exponentially. You would imagine like a Tarbosaurus or a Tyrannosaurus having kilometers and kilometers of territory just dedicated to itself. So in a paddock like this, I imagine it'd be too small. So, you know, once the full game is out, once we have like more stuff to do with like, you know, decorations, more transport options, more paths, stuff like that, then we'll definitely get into more of like a full, you know, massive paddock. Like here, this is more just the, you know, like we're just kind of exploring the game at the moment, you know, just trying stuff out, and it's still a decent enough size. I think it's not huge by any stretch of the imagination. It's still pretty big, but not big enough, I think. So maybe once the full game's out, we'll definitely it's not maybe, honestly, I'm gonna build some massive habitats. But yeah, it'll be a lot of fun, I think. Some of the things I'm loving doing in this game, by the way, is blending all these different terrain options. I think that looks really good, especially some of the like mud, like you can see on the shoreline here, and the little pebbles. They all overlay each other quite nicely. Some of the ones that don't play as well with each other are the sand textures, but generally you can make it work if you just kind of fiddle around with the different intensities and like just kind of dapple your brush across the landscape a little bit. Using more rocks, trying to use fewer rocks this time compared to the last habitat I built, because that one was meant to be like a really craggly valley, and this one is more an open kind of pond area where the Tyrannosaurus have a lot more open space to walk around. And I think these rocks do help with that feel, because it's just the pond area that kind of has the pebbly rocks, so I think it ends up looking nice. A couple other things you'll see me build today. We're going to build like kind of a staff area or a loading area for the animal, where it would have been brought in or taken out for like vet, like if it needs to go to the vet and stuff like that. So it's just a building in the back that we'll do in a second, as well as some big rock barriers. Stuff like that we'll do generally throughout this episode. But while we're doing that, I just wanted to talk about the species, because it's an interesting one. So like I said, Tarbosaurus is, some people do say Tyrannosaurus bataar, and it's kind of, again, debated. I think either would make sense, though geographically these two genuses, or if they are two species, they were separated by a huge amount, because Tyrannosaurus was of course North American and Tarbosaurus was Asian. It was found in Mongolia. And being from Mongolia, it actually had probably one of the most interesting ecosystems of all dinosaurs. Like I can think of like some really cool, like fascinating ecosystems in the Mesozoic era. For example, Cretaceous North Africa was really cool. You'd have such interesting creatures, giant crocodilians, Spinosaurus, Carcharodontosaurus. But like this specific area, Cretaceous Mongolia, is just bizarre. The amount of like absolutely like just completely bizarre creatures you would have found there just completely outweighs most other locales, I think. There are smaller tyrannosaurs like Alioramus. And the really weird ones. You have the big theropods like Therizinosaurus, which was most likely a herbivore with those giant claws on its hands, which they used to like pull down branches probably. You'd have things like ornithomimids, which like Gallimimus and stuff. But you also had Deinocheirus, which is one of my favorite dinosaurs. It's going to be in Prehistoric Kingdom, by the way. And it's also one of the most bizarre dinosaurs in general. It kind of had a humpback, looked a bit like a duck, looked a bit like a goose, looked a bit like a giant bear. It's the most bizarre creature you can think of, and it's absolutely fascinating. And for the longest time, we only had the fossils of its arms. So it's kind of crazy. And Deinocheirus and Therizinosaurus both actually have the longest front arms of any bipedal dinosaur. And they both lived in the same area at the same time, which is just completely unprecedented. It's so weird. And of course you have some of the really famous dinosaurs, like you probably had like Velociraptors, Protoceratops. You have some sauropods as well, like you had Opisthocoelicaudia, which honestly took me a million years to learn how to pronounce. I could never pronounce it as a kid, but now I can kind of. I hope. I don't know. but it's just crazy how incredibly diverse this part of the world was at that time, with such unusual animals. And Tarbosaurus, of course, lived alongside them. And that's why I feel like when I'm talking about him now, I feel like I'm kind of overshadowing the poor thing. But I mean, it was the apex predator for sure. It was the largest carnivore in the area. And one interesting thing about tyrannosaurs is that when they scaled up as they grew, they didn't scale like linearly. Their proportions all changed with time, kind of like how people do and most animals do. But when they were young, the snouts would have been a lot more slender and long. So they will have filled an entirely different ecological niche. And that would have been quite interesting to see, actually, because then you'd have adults essentially filling an entirely different role in the ecosystem than the young ones, which is quite cool, I think. And that's just kind of the case with a lot of big tyrannosaurs, especially Tyrannosaurus itself. But yeah, that's pretty much it I have to talk about these guys. Except for one more thing, which is just the most insane thing. It has this dinosaur, Tarbosaurus, has a weird relationship with famous actor Nicolas Cage. So apparently Nicolas Cage, for the longest time, had a Tarbosaurus skull, which was illegally stolen. Like, not that you can legally steal something, but I mean it was stolen, and he bought it at a gallery for like, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of pounds of score or something like that. And he was actually he eventually had to like return it to Mongolia, which is crazy. So he bought it from a gallery, which got it from like a fossil smuggler. And I'm just like, first off, why would you? It's just the idea that Nicolas Cage, of all people, is weirdly connected to this one Mongolian tyrannosaur. It's just such a bizarre idea. And also, don't go around buying dubiously, procured fossils. In fact, just probably don't buy fossils in general. Like, of course, if they're small fossils, or like you find a claw or a tooth somewhere, absolutely fine. If you find a whole skull, that's the sort of stuff that should be in a museum, like to be studied and to be examined and then put on display for the public, that sort of thing. Like, the idea that an actor had it in like his private collection is both hilarious and just kind of upsetting, because like, it was a full skull of a Tarbosaurus, and now like it was out of the public eye for so long, which is just such a shame. Like, or not even the public eye, just the academic eye. Like, it wasn't researched, it wasn't looked at, it wasn't catalogued, and like stuff like that has so much value to science. So having it privately owned was just Anyways, entirely a random rant out of the way, but here we have a little viewing area for our little Tarbosaurus, and we're just doing a very simple one. Again, scaling tool is the best. Absolute chef's kiss. That was the, whoever thought, let's put scaling in Prehistoric Kingdom, I want to give you like an award, because that is such an game changer. Absolutely. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Absolute game changer. Makes my life so much easier when I'm building, makes everyone's life so much easier when they're building, and you get really cool stuff like that. And I think it looks good. Also, you may have noticed there's 2 staff areas, and one of them actually has a ramp, which is where you load the dinosaur in, but the other one has a cage. So I imagine if you wanted to feed them or you just wanted to observe them, you could go into the cage and the dinosaur wouldn't be able to access you, but you could of course have a nice, long observational look at it to make sure it's all okay and stuff like that. Now we're coming up towards the end of the episode, just adding in a few more final rocks off to the side. Some foliage here and there. Not just some, a lot of foliage. And in this last few minutes, we're actually going to end up doing quite a few big things. We're going to introduce a cave for the Tarbosaurus to go and chill in. And we're also going to add in some pseudo enrichment items. There's no enrichment items in the game yet. There will be. But what I've done is, it's actually from the Pseudoceratops habitat we did in the first episode, which is just some logs wrapped with rope, which is just a simple enrichment thing. They can scratch against it, they can bite it, do whatever they like. It's always nice for an animal to just be given something they can kind of try and destroy, basically, because they'll just kind of have a go at it and enjoy themselves. It'll give them a bit of a workout, and at the same time, really, as predators, you want to give them as much enrichment as you can, especially for predators in zoos. Predators kind of need that. A lot of grazing animals, you can kind of get away with it. I wouldn't say you can get away with it, but you can kind of maybe take less effort in giving them enrichment, because a lot of time they will just spend the hours grazing. But with predators, especially apex predators like this, you want to give them as much enrichment as you can. So I'm looking forward to when the game does include enrichment, so that we can provide it to the animals. So looking forward to that. Here's the cave. It's kind of a pseudo cave. It's like an artificial cave with a few canopies to just cover up the front. I think it looks pretty nice. The poles could be better, I think. But again, this whole alpha stuff, we're just exploring the game, doing what comes naturally, and nothing's going to be pristine and perfect. But oh my god, I just can't say enough how much I'm enjoying this game. Sometimes, even like I said, even though I wasn't really in the mood to build, it just came so naturally. So yeah. Anyways, that is it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Prehistoric Kingdom videos are coming out every Monday at 5 p.m. UK time. Plan to do videos every Wednesday at 5 p.m. UK time. And of course, Jurassic World Evolution videos every Friday at 5 p.m. UK time. If you like the video, please do give it a like down below. Leave a comment as well. Tell me what you want to see next in Prehistoric Kingdom. If you want me to explore any mechanics in particular, let me know. And of course, do subscribe for more of this content and more general content. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye. you.